Wasn't even thinking like, oh my God, I'm gonna be in a relationship with him. I was just thinking like, heard about this BDE, need to get out there. Like I need to just like jumpstart I was just basically DTF.
Raffel Kubus and Iagil look like a normal vlogger couple, and if you scroll through their socials, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, nothing seems suspicious at first glance. You see consistent family time pictures and live family updates, but the longer you watch, the more you realize something disturbing. Despite the fact that Raf married Ia when she was just 22 while he was 43, Raf has a daughter named Celine who is 1 year younger than Ia. And if it couldn't get any weirder,
I thought she was older because she was out at a bar.
What makes it even crazier is the fact that despite the couple knowing that their age gap is causing weird suspicions and controversy, they keep posting about it.
Out to play ball so we could ruin them.
So if you don't have the tea of what's been going on with this couple, grab your popcorn, because today I dive into the chaos. From creepy confessions to weird relationship power dynamics, this is the disturbing story of Raf and Ia. At the early stages of their online career, they shared normal couple cute pics, milestones, and shared their engagement. Nothing anyone would consider problematic. But as time went by, it's like they realized that their content was flat. It did not bring in the engagement they wanted, and they made a radical decision to change tactics. They started making reels, and one day they shared about their interestingly large age gap. See, Raf and Ia met when Raf was 41 years old and Ia was just 19. And as interesting as that was, the couple made sure that nobody would forget that. When these posts went viral, it caused outrage, with people questioning how a man would be comfortable dating a girl 21 years younger than him. One commenter said, "Imagine being 21 and looking at a baby and say, 'I'll marry this baby one day.'" Another added, "He's the type to hang out at high school parties when he's in college. Probably did at this effing point. Poor girl was probably groomed." And while more comments like these came up, surprisingly not everyone was disturbed by this. One commenter argued, when he was 20, she was non-existent, but why is it okay when an older woman dated a younger guy, but bad when an older man dated younger? And another backed this up by stating, "At LutherRuler7487, it's so true. If it was the other way around, and she was older, all the comments would be positive. It's the same if an overweight woman has a very attractive male partner. It's all you go girl rubbish. But if an overweight man has a very attractive female partner, it's he must have money, or why would she be with him?" While this was controversial and had people talking all sorts of things about him, it brought one thing to the couple's channels that was kind of worth the risk to them: engagement. They realized that provocative videos brought more attention, and so they doubled down, posting any kind of clip that would get people talking. Am I the only person who feels like this is a red flag and a train wreck waiting to happen? I feel so bad for this girl. Something is so off about this man. And every once in a while, they decided to hit the nail on the head. Nigga! And it worked, because after seeing this post, I think that is one of the filthiest words I've ever heard. And it offends me every single time I hear it. Give me a break. Another one said, "I am married to a very wonderful black queen, and that is one word I would never call her, even if my life depended on it." Hell, one of them went full brutal, praying that, yikes, may this kind of love relationship never find me, my daughter, and my son. And then there were posts like this. "I've seen you in Albuquerque, waiting out of..." Now, to understand how things ever got this strange, you have to rewind to when it all began.
So, I was working, and, so I was a waitress. I keep seeing this guy stare at me, he's not even in my section, so I'm ignoring him, so I'm like, I'm not gonna go over.
The two met at a sports bar in Chicago when Raf was 41 years old, recently divorced and working as a stockbroker, while Ia was 19, just starting adulthood and still very much figuring herself out.
I figured if I just stared at her, she was the only cute girl in the whole place. So I figured if I stare at her long enough, I'll get her attention, then she'll come to me. And then finally she starts looking at me, so I'm like...
Granted, she went because the club was one of those casual places where people go to watch games, drink, and kill time.
A lot, but we met at a bar in 2019.
I thought she was older because she was out at a bar.
What's strange was that they've said multiple times that neither of them asked the other's age right away, which already raised eyebrows later, but at the time, they didn't see it as important.
I didn't even know how old he was when we started hanging out. We just hung out.
Raffel has claimed he assumed Ia was at least 21 because she was out at a bar.
You know, since we did meet at a drinking establishment where people are supposed to be 21 or older.
Unlike here in Poland, you can be 18.
Right.
Ia, on the other hand, has said she knew he was older, just not how much older. And for about 3 weeks, they dated without knowing the exact numbers. Yeah, it happened.
Yes, for 3 weeks. Then,
And I've never had that connection with any younger guy that I've been with.
Then we found out how old we were, and then we were already kind of smitten with each other.
Yeah.
However, that changed when Raffel came to Ia's family home for Easter lunch, and during a casual conversation, Ia's mother mentioned her daughter's age, 19, and that was the moment everything snapped.
It was a little uncomfortable for me, though. Just to be clear, it was awkward a bit at first. It was a little awkward and uncomfortable after I found out that you were under 20.
By then, Raffel was already emotionally invested, and interestingly, Ia had a thing for older guys.
For me, I've always liked older men. I don't know what it is about it. It's just always clicked for me. Younger guys were always, attractive, but older men, I've always been drawn to them for some reason.
Raffel later confessed that he was a little thrown off by the fact that she was that young, but Ia talked him out of it.
And then I was against continuing the relationship because of that, but she convinced me that it's okay.
I've always searched for certainty in my life, and I found that with him.
Maybe age is truly just a number because the two had a bond and they wanted to see where their relationship would go. But as much as the couple tried to explain their love story, some saw something completely different and predatory. One user commented, in other words, he wanted to teach her things she didn't know. Because in one of their videos he said, "I said to myself, I'm going to relationship the hell out of her." Another one said, "For some of you all saying that age is just a number is very disturbing. So y'all mean to tell me that y'all are okay with a teenager marrying someone that's twice their age or so?" But if things couldn't get any weirder, Ia learned something else she didn't know going on. Raffel had a daughter named Celine, and she was only 1 year younger than her. That detail alone was enough to make people pause. But what happened next is what truly set this story apart. The thing is, Ia was nervous about meeting Celine, and why wouldn't she be? Meeting your boyfriend's kid is already awkward under normal circumstances, but meeting someone who's basically your peer is a whole different thing. But when they finally met, there was no tension. No coldness, no what is happening here moment. Instead, they clicked immediately, or at least that's what they showed. And honestly, that surprised everyone, including them. They talked easily, laughed easily, had almost the same interests, same energy, and same sense of humor. And because they were so close in age, there was no obvious power dynamic between them. However, it didn't feel like a parent-child adjacent relationship. It felt like two girls meeting and realizing they could actually be friends. But that's where things get complicated because, well, for the obvious reason, imagine being friends with your dad's girlfriend who is as young as you are. So, is she kind of your stepmom? And while they tried to show that everything was great on camera, some viewers were genuinely concerned, especially about Celine. I feel bad for the daughter. I hope she's doing okay mentally. Something's definitely wrong here. And another one theorized, imagine knowing your dad likes women your age. I'd really be disgusted. Or as another one honestly commented, if my dad broke up with my mom and dated someone 1 year older than me, I would be disgusted. It's not the age gap between them that's weird. It's the age gap between the wife and daughter. Although some still saw nothing wrong with this family dynamic. As the months went on, Ia and Celine didn't just stay friendly, they got close, fast. Word is they started spending real time together. Shopping trips, nail appointments, hair days, and hanging out casually. The kind of stuff best friends do without thinking about it. And eventually, Celine moved in with Raffel and Ia. For this reason, the public went crazy because from the outside, the dynamic became hard to read. Because if you didn't already know who was who, it wasn't always obvious who was the girlfriend and who was the daughter. They acted similarly, hung out together constantly, appeared in the same spaces, the same photos, the same routines, and even on posts showing just how comfortable they were around each other. With this causing a lot of attention, Celine has always been consistent in her stance. She said, "It didn't bother me when I found out. It was nerve-wracking to meet her, but we get on well." On top of that, she framed it as being happy for her dad and genuinely enjoying Ia as a person. Ia echoed that, saying the closeness made sense because they were basically the same age and had the same interests. And Raf, he presented it as the ideal scenario. To him, this was proof that everything was healthy, there was no drama, and that everyone was happy. It was a relief not having tension between the two most important women in his life. But to outsiders, the speed and intensity of that bond raised questions because of the structure around it. A fiancé and a daughter become best friends almost immediately while being nearly the same age inside a relationship that already pushed social boundaries. But how did the parents of each side react to this unusual couple? To understand that, you have to go back to when they got married. Now, by December 2019, Raf proposed to Ia in Chicago, just 8 months after they had met. And by that point, the relationship had already crossed several invisible thresholds. This wasn't just a man proposing to a younger partner because Ia was no longer on the outside stepping into Rafel's life. She was already deeply woven into it. She lived in the same space, shared routines, family time, and most notably, she had already formed a close, almost inseparable bond with Celine, Raf's daughter. So when the engagement happened, it felt like a formality catching up to a reality that already existed. But that didn't mean everyone processed it the same way. Ia's family took time to adjust. Her mother initially struggled with the idea, especially once the full age gap became clear, because Raf was closer to her parents' age than to Ia's, and that alone made things uncomfortable. And who can blame her? I think the mother really wants to be happy for her baby girl, but maybe she's just very concerned. Her stepfather reportedly didn't speak to Rafel for weeks after finding out, needing time to come to terms with what the relationship actually meant long-term. And he can't be blamed because he was just 4 years older than Raf. So to him, it felt like Raf was marrying someone young enough to be his daughter. And some were quick to point this out. As one commenter sarcastically put it, "I'm not gaining a son-in-law, I'm gaining a brother," said no exciting dad ever. Eventually, though, Ia's family came around, not because the age gap suddenly made sense, but because Ia didn't change her mind. She was consistent and defended the relationship. And from their perspective, Rafel wasn't behaving recklessly or dismissively toward her, something that mattered more than public opinion. By the time the engagement was official, Ia's family had accepted it, even if they never fully related to it. While that was Ia's family, Rafel's side was quieter because the tension there was different.
You're gonna meet the family today. This is Rafael's dad. You met him once.
So I forgot to tell you guys, this is my uncle sitting next to me. He's married to my aunt.
To them, it was more about roles than it was about age, because he was introducing someone who is essentially his daughter's age. Someone who dressed like her, socialized like her, lived with her, and spent time with her in ways that mirrored friendship more than hierarchy. Still, Rafel maintained that everyone was happy, and publicly, Celine expressed no objections, which made it easier for the family to support the engagement without pushing back openly. With the engagement done, Raf and Ia decided to get married.
You can hear it in the silence.
And although some were happy for them and congratulated them for this, some were still a little confused. When young people say, "I married the love of my life," I'm confused because if you're only 22, how do you know? You haven't even lived yet. Regardless, it happened. The ceremony was beautiful, and the couple were showered with love, both offline and online. And just like that, Ia had officially become Celine's stepmom. And up to this point, people were still concerned if Ia was truly happy with it, or if she was being made to look the part when the cameras were on. One user put it, "Daughter looks so uncomfortable, she's like, we went to high school together." And another one suggested, "The daughter's eyes are screaming how uncomfortable she is. If my father was dating someone a year older than me, I wouldn't show up ever again. I feel bad for the daughter, honestly. She looks like they forced her to pretend she's cool with it. But man, they both call him daddy for different reasons. Maybe they were right to be concerned for her, and perhaps she just let her dad do what made him happy, even if it meant saying nothing and bottling up what she really felt. And although nothing about this was illegal, considering that Ia was an adult, Celine was an adult, and Raf wasn't hiding anything, it crossed lines people didn't know how to untangle. The discomfort wasn't just about a 22-year age gap. Age gaps exist everywhere, and many people defend them without hesitation. The problem here was structural, because Ia and Celine occupied the same generational space. They had the same cultural references, similar maturity levels, and perhaps similar daily routines. They were treated as peers, not separated by a clear parental boundary. Yet they were both tied to this same man in two completely different roles. That overlap is what made people uneasy, because neither role was clearly distinct in how it looked from the outside. To viewers, it felt like watching two parallel relationships exist side by side, with no clean emotional separation between them. That's why once Celine entered the picture and became best friends with her dad's fiancé, the story stopped being merely controversial and became uncomfortable. Even for people who normally defend age gap relationships and believe adults should live how they want, the roles here collapsed into each other in a way that felt socially disorienting. Yet that did not bother Raf and Ia, because by the time they welcomed their daughter, the relationship had already been picked apart online for years. So when news of the pregnancy surfaced, it didn't land quietly. However, what stood out immediately was how intentional they were about privacy. Unlike earlier phases of their relationship, this wasn't over-documented. There were no daily updates, no oversharing, just confirmation, followed by long stretches of silence. After their daughter was born, there was a clean shift from the controversy to responsibility, as the couple became less reactive online and far more focused on home life. Ia, meanwhile, leaned into stability, stepping back from public discourse and centering her role as a stay-at-home mom, and she seemed to enjoy it.
I've literally dreamed of this my entire life. I've always only wanted to be a stay-at-home mom and wife. I never dreamt of a career. This is my career, staying at home. I don't want to work. He works. I want to be taken care of.
But that media silence didn't last long. With time, as the couple leaned further into sharing the controversial sides of their lives online, it became clear that they were willing to cross any line for more engagement. And as their pages kept growing and the age gap clips kept pulling numbers, another shift quietly happened in the content. It was subtle at first, almost easy to miss if you weren't already watching closely, because instead of just leaning into shock about their relationship, they started experimenting with posts that played into racial stereotypes. It usually followed the same rhythm, where engagement would cool off for a bit, comments would slow down, and then suddenly a short clip would drop that felt oddly loaded, framed as humor or just a joke, but vague enough that it forced viewers to fill in the blanks themselves.
The gardeners have planted white roses when I specifically asked for red.
You could always paint the roses red.
What an odd thing to say.
And some were triggered by this. One commenter wrote, "You're either gonna proudly be you or follow someone else's culture," which is a form of self-hate. Yet they were not the only ones, as multiple people joined in the conversation, whether against her or supporting her. Regardless, it worked and got people talking. Seeing this, the couple decided to double down, which is exactly where the outrage started to do the work for them, because what's wrong if the child is dark? Who told you not to marry a black girl, and why did they give you that reason? And why are you glad she isn't dark? What is happening? Saying dark as if it was a chance of getting an incurable disease, and Ia made this unbelievable. These weren't long explanations or thoughtful discussions, but quick, somewhat contextless moments that relied on implication, tone, and timing, because the less they explained, the more people argued in the comments, and the more the algorithm rewarded the chaos that followed, especially when viewers started stitching, duetting, and reposting the clips with their own reactions. What stood out to a lot of people was how often these posts intersected with the already uncomfortable power imbalance narrative surrounding their relationship. This is because when you mix race-coded jokes, historical references, or language tied to control with a couple that already raises eyebrows due to age, money, and authority, the reaction becomes immediate and intense, even among people who normally scroll past this kind of thing. Instead of addressing that discomfort head-on, they leaned into plausible deniability, letting supporters argue that critics were reaching or too sensitive, while critics argued that intent didn't matter if the impact landed the same way. And while Raph and Ia mostly stayed quiet, letting the comment section turn into a battleground that kept the post alive far longer than normal reel ever would. I'm not even black and I feel offended. What an odd and very disrespectful thing to say. Wow, usually dark humor is my thing, but this isn't one of them. Keep your dominating love complex to yourself, please. Another noticeable pattern was how rarely controversial comments were removed, especially the ones that sparked long reply chains, because those threads became the engine of the post, with people arguing past each other about race, humor, boundaries, and whether outrage itself was the point, which only made the content spread further beyond their usual audience. And when backlash was at its most high, the response was never a clean apology or a clear explanation, but rather a reframing, usually leaning on intent, sarcasm, or the idea that people don't know them in real life, and they just knew the right buttons to press. It's like they were not taking any chances with this. What made this feel less accidental over time was how often these moments were followed by engagement updates, Q&As, or follow-up posts that referenced the controversy without resolving it. It was almost like a wink to the fact that the attention was working, even if it came wrapped in criticism. But despite the many racial stereotypes they relied on for engagement, they still claimed that race had no power in their relationship. But the race issue wasn't the last creative idea they had. People also noticed how the race-based clips rarely existed on their own, because they were almost always layered on top of existing dynamics, with Raph positioned as the older authority figure and Ia framed as playful or dismissive. This made the controversial couple even more controversial, as people were already uneasy about how much control one person seemed to hold in the relationship. But it got even worse.
Nothing is wrong with cooking and cleaning for your man. It does not mean that you're a maid, and it does not mean that you're a slave.
Like, he can, teach me things and, help me not make the same mistakes that he might have made back in his youth.
And then there was this other one that really divided the audience. Some commenters thought this was over the top and that they could never do this to their woman, while others saw this form of submissiveness as the only thing a man would want. Now, perhaps they loved and appreciated being a traditional couple, who knows? But then there were posts that just came out the wrong way. As the audience split into defenders and critics, the couple's brand quietly shifted from unusual but happy to provocative by design. And once that line was crossed, every new post was viewed through that lens, with people waiting to see how far they'd push it next, rather than whether the content actually said anything meaningful. By the time viewers started openly calling it rage bait, the pattern was already established, because the clips felt timed, tested, and repeated just enough to keep the conversation alive without getting their accounts banned. And this was annoying to people. One Reddit user posted, "Anyone here watch these two? They have a 1-year-old daughter, and Ia met him when she was 19 and he was 40-something. Most of her content is rage bait, but it's infuriating to watch her post dumb shorts. Like, grow up." And underneath all that rage bait content, quietly fueling the discomfort, was how the couple found nothing wrong with their weird relationship dynamics, and what Raph had to say about why he chose Ia despite knowing her age.
I know why I chose you in particular, and I also know why men choose younger women. I have friends, and I've been with other women before you.
Turns out after being already married and having a family before, life gets a little boring because Raph had kind of seen it all and done it all. Perhaps he just needed to tap into his younger self to see the world differently.
Seeing the same thing, doing and seeing the same things through their eyes, just gives you more life and excitement. And
I like that.
Oh, because, it's I've already tried sushi. I've tried Indian.
Whether these controversial clips were made just for clout, one thing's clear. They worked because they kept people talking, and as a result, their online career grew. However, on the flip side, the content also paints Raph as a really creepy guy who is comfortable marrying a girl almost the same age as his daughter, and E is seen as a girl who had daddy issues and settled for an older man. In any case, if you found this video helpful, or if you think there's so much more to Raph and E than what meets the eye, share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe and check out the other videos on the channel.